Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State, a Penn State football show presented by FanDuel. I'm Tom Hannafin. He's Justin King. Penn State, number 2 in the country, takes care of business against Nevada of the Mountain West by a score of 46-11 to open up the 2025 campaign at home at Beaver Stadium on a weekend where you saw number 3 Ohio State defeat number 1 Texas. So we'll see how that plays out in the rankings. But in the words of James Franklin, those rankings really don't mean that much in the grand scheme of things. If you wind up seeing Penn State as number 1, Ohio State is number 1, hey, it's still August right now, and it'll be early September by the time Penn State plays another game. But this was exactly what you expected to see from Penn State in its opening contest against a team that finished dead last in the Mountain West last year. Hats off to the Nevada Wolfpack and Jeff Choate, and quarterback Chubba Purdy certainly played his tail off. But man, this was just exactly what you expected to see from Penn State. Justin, what jumped out to you in this first game?
I mean, just controlling W, right? In the opening game, I thought the operational offense and defense was pretty good for the opening game of the season. I think the offense, either controlled the line of scrimmage in a decent manner. I think Drew making some nice plays, having some presence from the receivers, Pena and my other guy, number 1, just being out there. Kyron Hudson, yes. Like just showing elevation from the receiver play of last year. Just on just simple passes. And it just gives you a comfort, again, being able to run the ball. I mean, Katron Allen really finding some yards out of nothing, really toting the thing. And they just look good and efficient on offense. You want to see them capitalize on all the turnovers and, short fields and things of that nature. But I think that can still be cleaned up. But I've seen some improvement from some of the gaps that we saw last year. So I was encouraged.
Then to your point, it makes sense. It was like you have 3, quintessential NFL preseason games here to start off this year, and then you get a bye week, and then you get Oregon, on September 27th. So you have a little bit of time. Just kind of taking a look at this game. Where do you want to start, offense or defense?
Start on offense. They scored
Start
46 points.
They did score 46 points, and it's not that they didn't have help from the defense, and we'll get to the performance by the defense. 3 turnovers, 2 in the first quarter. So, you just kind of saw the trend that was overall happening with this game. Let's start off at quarterback. Drew Allar, 22 of 26, 217 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 85% completion percentage, and then 6 carries for 20 yards, and an average of 3.3 and a long of 11. This, Justin, not to say I told you so, is exactly what I thought you were going to see out of Drew Allar. Not video game numbers, nothing crazy. His numbers are higher in terms of completion attempts and completions. Attempts and completions, because he's gotten better every single year, and that he just has that higher volume that he can be responsible for, and it's not as big of a deal. But that range was exactly what I kind of expected for him in this game. If anything, even a little bit less. And he did what he had to do. He didn't have to do anything too special because you understand the competition. But what did you see from Drew?
I mean, you saw great timing and decision making. I don't feel like he was forcing anything that he had to. When the play was there to be made, he made it.
Yeah.
And again, he has that unique ability to make the big throws in every throw on the field. So that really opens up your playbook. When you talk about taking what the defense gives you, he can do that at a level that a lot of quarterbacks can't. And then having the running back duo and having time to throw the ball was another thing that I was impressed with. He seemed to be under control, and nothing seemed to be pressed from the offensive standpoint the whole day. And I think that's something that you can hang your hat on.
According to our friends at FanDuel, coming into the game, the spread was about 43.5. So some of you might be a little bit disappointed by this, but still, Penn State ultimately putting 46 points on its season opener against Nevada, 46-11, the final score. So you still feel really positive about this. I want to turn our attention to the running game first, because I do want to get to the transfer wide receivers here. But overall, Penn State finishes the day 3.8 yards per carry on 135 yards rushing, 36 attempts, and 4 rushing touchdowns coming from Nick Singleton, who had 2, Katron Allen, who you mentioned, who had 1, and Ethan Grunkemeyer, who had 1 himself. Nick Singleton, 8 carries for 19 yards and 2 touchdowns. So a pretty decent clip there. Nick looked exactly like Nick. Katron looked exactly like Katron, and I don't mean that in a they look the same or they look worse or they look better. Yeah, like they looked like what you expect them to look like. I was texting you because there's a wonderful comment by the CBS commentary crew comparing Katron Allen to Ernest Biner, who was a star for the Cleveland Browns many, many years ago. So probably beyond the ages of some of our viewers and listeners, but still, you and I were texting. We're like, oh, that's a hell of a compliment. Can you put that into context for some of our listeners and viewers who might not understand Ernest Biner's impact on the game?
I mean, not to go too deep. I mean, we just talked about the people's champ, right? Like, I think that's kind of how to sum it up from that standpoint of the guy that you can really galvanize the troops and everybody can get behind. I think Katron represents that, even though we talk about him in the juxtaposition between him and Nick Singleton, but like him being not the underdog per se, but the guy that does the grunt work and is really the heart and beat and soul of the team, right? And so when you have a player like that, that's so important in the game of football. And I think Katron brings that, and his attitude embodies the whole football team. And I think that's going to be a rallying cry as we continue to move forward, especially just the physicality that they played with on offense that I didn't mention in my first segment.
In the receiving game, Nick Singleton chipped in with 4 catches for 37 yards. Katron Allen, 2 catches for just 2 yards. And that's kind of on track, Justin, with what we saw last season, and that Nick Singleton has been able to contribute a little bit more as a receiver. It's not necessarily Katron Allen's game. Obviously, that's something Stan Drayton has probably tried to work on through the offseason, through camp, trying to add those little singular percentage points of value to his overall game. So I'm curious to see if he gets implemented a little bit more as these non-conference games go on. But I got to say, the offensive line looked exactly the way that I thought they would be. I liked that you were seeing different combinations of the offensive line early in this game, Justin, that in the first quarter, the second quarter, kind of like you pointed out earlier on this week, is that, hey, you're not just going to see Penn State be like, hey, it's the third quarter, we're up by 30. Now we'll put the subs in. It's like, no, we want to see how the depth pieces within this offensive line handle 2nd and 6 in enemy territory in the second quarter, where you could potentially convert on the next play to get a score. It's like, how are you going to react in that sort of situation? How did you feel about the offensive line?
I felt good about it. Like I said, they never seemed pressed throughout the whole game. And I mean, obviously it's a better, they're better. We have better talent than Nevada, but even in that, understanding operations, not getting tricked by blitzes or any tech stunts, and really giving Drew a clean pocket most of the day to throw the football. I mean, obviously moving the guys off the line of scrimmage will continue to get better as they play together. But man, I was pleased. I was pleased with all position groups, man. You come out with a 46-11 win and really commanding the entire game. There's a little plays here and there, but overall, I thought it was a very well executed game all around.
Let's go to the wide receivers, because I think that's what a lot of people want to hear about here. Just from a distance, how did you feel about the wide receivers, notably the 3 transfers?
Encouraged. I felt encouraged, just making the plays that you're supposed to make, right? When you're talking about, 2nd and 8, just getting 8, 15-yard catches, whether it's out routes, making the catches in the zone, creating separation when you need to create separation, right? Being in the holes or the zone windows that you need to be in. Drew being able to make those plays, having the tight, the toe tapping from Kyron Hudson on the sidelines, like those nice plays like that, where you can just, have this confidence where we can continue to have long drives and be put together by efficient runs and nice chunk plays in the pass game. And so I think it was a great addition and benefit from everything else that was going on last year.
So I want to dive into, I think Kyron Hudson makes the most sense here early on, Justin, because while Trevor Pena had the most receptions of any receiver, Kyron Hudson finished this today, 6 receptions, 89 yards, 1 touchdown, a long of 31, 11 yards after the catch. That's all on 8 targets. So when you take a look at what his game was, you're averaging about 15 yards per completion. I've said this before, and I'm curious if there's anybody in the history of Penn State football that Penn State fans would necessarily be like, oh, I remember that situation. But I continue to say Kyron Hudson reminds me of Muhsin Muhammad from the Carolina Panthers years ago. He obviously has put on a substantial amount of weight from last season when he was playing with USC, and you saw some of his highlights played during the game against Nevada today, the one-handed catch against LSU to open the season in 2024. So he has that highlight reel ability, but he's clearly packed on some muscle from last season in a good way. He strikes me in the same mold as Muhammad because he's a possession receiver. I didn't see any of the receivers necessarily show me that pop and explosivity, which is I'm not alarmed by that necessarily, but Kyron Hudson was just steady, reliable, sure-handed. Yes, I understand people are going to be frustrated. He dropped the touchdown in the end zone. Ball was a little bit behind him. Defender was right there, so it made an easy play for the defensive back. But still, Kyron Hudson as your reliable number one, not bad in my eyes. What'd you see?
No, not at all. I mean, he had a presence to him, right? Like where I felt like when the ball was coming in his vicinity, he was going to grab it. And I think when you have that, it's a level of confidence and assurance that even as a fan, when you're watching, like, he's going to make the play. Something that we were never able to get over the past couple of years. And like you said, he's much like even seeing him in person, he's a bigger presence than you have assumed or seen in the past years. But he has a great catch radius, right? Like he throw the ball around him, he snatched the ball out of the air, and he looks like he's confident out there. And I'm happy. Great addition to our offense.
He's a big dude. Listed at 6'1", 213. I think that 213 might be a little slim in the grand scheme of things. He doesn't look fat by any means, dude. Like, this is a muscular dude who's going to take the ball away from people. But the one thing I saw overall from the offense, and I will get to the other receivers, Justin, and tell me how you feel. At least in the passing game, tempo, higher pace, take what the defense gives you in terms of the passing game. It wasn't forcing plays necessarily. Not that Drew Allar and company did that last year, but I think we can agree that with Tyler Warren at tight end as such a unicorn, he was the center of the universe. It's so many different ways, and you're scheming ways to get him open because Tyler at a tight end, he didn't have high 4.2, low 4.3 speed. You did have to kind of create some space for him in a couple of different packages. So this just seemed like you had multiple guys who had the ability to get open. Were they going to burn the defense? You didn't really see that necessarily today from the passing game. And again, I'm not alarmed by that, but I just saw a passing game that was like, we're going to make you cover everything. We're going to make you cover everyone. And whatever you decide is the least threatening to you, we're going to take, and we're just going to carve up the field. Did you see the same thing?
I did the same thing, and it was a great execution by Drew and being able to make all the different plays. And he looked a little slimmer and moving around back there. Like,
he looked good.
Like noticeably smaller, in a good way. I mean, whether it was like the release and moving around in the pocket, he did some really good things. Like you said, with those windows being open, Drew being efficient, being able to make all the throws from the first, second, and third level from an open window and tight windows. And so I think that's something to hang your hat on, because I don't think we just executed the run game at its height today, but still being able to come out and scoring 46 points in a commanding fashion, something good to tap the desk on.
To your point, I still think there's something to be desired from the running game, but I'm not alarmed. I'm not upset by any means. I think there were expectations, and I certainly feel like this is the best offensive line in the country. So I had a bit of an expectation they were going to be able to push around a team the size of Nevada, the skill of Nevada, a little bit more than they did. But again, first game of the season, getting organized, getting those things figured out. And again, 4 out of 5 starters are pretty much in the same place they were last year, outside of Anthony Donko bumping into guard. And, you're trying out different pieces here, rotational pieces. So curious to see how that evolves. Getting back to the wide receivers, Trevor Pena, 7 catches for 74 yards, no touchdowns, but a long of 18 on 8 targets, 40 yards after the catch out of those 74. And then he had that end around on the first drive of the game, which was 1 carry for 13 yards, and kind of reminiscent of what he did at Syracuse. He could contribute in the passing game, the rushing game, special teams. You saw a lot of that today. Just kind of seemed like a Swiss Army knife that a guy like Andy Kotelnicki is probably salivating over in terms of what he can do with them. How did you feel about Pena from Syracuse?
I really like the addition. I mean, just a little spark out there. You talk about just the movement, the quickness, and like again, another guy that's able to find the holes, making some nice reads in his routes and making the catch at the end of the day. I like the fact that they were catching the ball with a level of separation and there wasn't DBs just draped over them. So that means they were creating separation with attacking the guys with speed. And so that's something that I've seen with him and Kyron throughout the whole day. And Drew has the arm talent to deliver the football. So I was excited, and I thought he had a nice showing for the first day at Penn State.
State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today.
Earlier on this week, the over-under for the score total on this was 57.5. That fluctuated a little bit by the time you got to kickoff, but still, this was exactly 57 points scored in this game. So if you were on FanDuel making every moment more, you might have been thrilled, you might have been not so thrilled, but that line did move as we got closer to kickoff. So that's something to pay attention to going forward with Penn State. Under James Franklin, I'll say this, Penn State has a pretty good statistical record of covering the spread. So, take from that what you will. Outside of Hudson and Pena at wide receiver, we talked about Nick Singleton, talked about what Katron Allen could do. Andrew Rappelier, Tysier Denmark, Luke Reynolds, Khalil Dinkins, Caden Wallace, Devontae Ross, another transfer, only had one catch for 4 yards, and then Liam Clifford was targeted. So you saw other guys get involved in the passing game, but nobody to the clip that you saw Pena and Hudson. Those guys were pretty much the focus. Any thoughts in terms of what you saw from tight end? I think it's so polarizing from what last year was, all the points we just made about Tyler Warren, that naturally it was going to be different. But did you expect it to be that different?
I mean, we talk about the increase from production from the receivers. I mean, it'd be a little different. So
yeah,
I'm not too surprised. Not mad at all, right? I'll take the production today versus, the production of last year. But no, not too surprised by that. We lost a first round tight end, and it'll take some time for guys to get their footing when it comes to working into that primary tight end position.
Lost the first round tight end. Penn State also lost a first-round top 3 defensive end, Abdul Carter, and you wouldn't freaking know it from the way Dani Dennis-Sutton played today against Nevada. And again, the first person to say we understand the level of competition. This was Nevada. This was a Mountain West team that finished bottom of the conference last year. All of that stuff up front. Dani Dennis-Sutton accounted for 2 turnovers. He was everywhere. He kept having his name called. And this is the dude who for years has said, I'm going to make myself into the best defensive end in America. And it's going to be a tough argument by the end of the year, looking at guys like him and Dylan Stewart from South Carolina. Like, there's some really talented defensive ends and edge rushers out there, but he's just such a different beast, Justin, than what Abdul Carter presented last year. He's not the slender, just like compact, muscular dude who is flexible and twitchy and bendy. He's 6'5", he's 265, he's like a slender Courtney Brown almost. That might not even be the appropriate comparison, but is there anybody in Penn State history that you're like, yeah, he reminds me a little bit of this? And even if it's not Penn State, anybody you remind you of?
No, because a lot of the guys that you're naming are like hybrid linebackers. He's like your true DN in that like JJ Watt vein. Like, if I'm trying to think of like that type, and he's probably bigger than 265. I think he's probably
275 sounds about right.
275, 280. Yeah, he's a big dude. I mean, but dominating performance when you talk about being disruptive and turning the ball over. I mean, those forced fumbles weren't a fluke or by accident type of play. Like, those were plays being created by the individual. Over the past couple of years, when we've lost games against Ohio State, I always bring up big players make big plays, and like that's the separating factor. He was making big plays. Like, he kind of, he made his declaration earlier that he was going to be a top player. And I mean, Penn State has a history of this. We got a guy that just signed for $188 million. Got another guy that just won top 5. And then we got this other guy coming up. So I think this is kind of normal for Penn State.
Did you have a hand in playing in recruiting that one guy who had $188 million?
That guy that the Cowboys didn't want? A little
Not
bit.
Mike.
I mean,
Mike. Yeah.
A little bit. Just a little bit.
I'm just curious about that. I always find that interesting. Dani Dennis-Sutton's final line: 5 total tackles, 1 sack, 2.5 tackles for loss. Excuse me. A pass breakup, a quarterback hurry, and 2 forced fumbles. 3 total turnovers forced by the Penn State defense. Outside of Dani Dennis-Sutton, Amari Campbell from UNC, he looked very sharp. And this was something coming into this game. We were focusing on linebacker, and Jim Knowles had been on the record saying, I trust 3 linebackers right now: Amari Campbell, Tony Rojas, Dom DeLuca. And you saw those guys quite a bit. You saw Dom DeLuca pretty much late into the game. You got a little bit of Keon Wiley late in the game as well. But like, he trusts those 3. Campbell looked sharp. I like the way that he played. What did you think?
I liked it too. I mean, I think it was like on point, especially when you talk about that first game. I was pleased with everyone's, assignment and position and just the way that they played from a sound perspective, tackling and running the football, blocking, just doing the basics across the board. And there weren't many leaky tackles. Maybe there were a couple splash plays, but just across the board, everyone seemed to play responsible, sound football.
The secondary, you got a lot of looks at the depth of the secondary. You saw Davian Collins, Zachy Wheatley, Babu Toure, Antoine Belgrave Shorter, who we learned earlier on this week is the starter at safety opposite Zachy Wheatley. So congratulations to ABS. Darius Dixon, who you and I have been talking about a lot. You saw him plenty on special teams, got involved on defense as well. Day Lane, King Mack had that outstanding punt return that the commentators, because the numbers get shared by so many different players, are like, that's Khalil Dinkins. I'm like, Khalil must have lost a shitload of weight.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, he's gotten smaller, man. And he's running.
I was like, is Khalil in the shade? Because I'm like, that's not Khalil, man.
No.
That was King Mack. Kenny Wosley Jr., Colin Dinkins, AJ Harris came up with that fumble recovery early on. Joseph, I'm trying to see who else he got involved here in the secondary. Lamont Payne. I mean, we just got a lot of people involved in general. So it looked like a really good showing from Lockdown U. How did you feel about the defensive backs?
I thought the defensive backs played well. I like sticky coverage. Wasn't too many opportunities to make a lot of plays, but they played sound football, made the tackles they needed to make. On to the next one.
Defensive tackle and defensive end. Zane Durant gets the interception, nearly had a thick 6, so that would have been fantastic to see, obviously, early on here in the season. Saw a lot of Xavier Gilliam, saw a lot of Ty Blanding, saw a lot of Owen Wafel, saw Eni White from Texas A&M get involved there later on in the game. So a lot of depth at defensive tackle. You saw Chaz Coleman, who everybody's been freaking out about, and it sounds like the red shirts for Dixon and Coleman are probably going to get burned. And I'm trying to think who else. Saw Jalen Harvey, Malachi Williams at defensive end. Zariah Fisher was talked about earlier on this week by James Franklin and company, is dealing with some more bumps and bruises coming out of camp. Did not play in this game. So I'm going to remain in the camp that I will believe it when I see it from Zariah Fisher. Everybody and their brother during the offseason within the program and around the program is saying, oh, Zariah Fisher's going to have a breakout season. Like, hard to have a breakout season if you're not on the field. And that's been his entire story, his time at Penn State. So I don't mean to be a hater, but I'm like, I'll believe it when I see it, that sort of thing. But getting to see some of the younger guys, the depth at defensive end especially, you didn't see anybody necessarily not named Dani Dennis-Sutton at defensive end really create havoc in the backfield, but you didn't see anything that was terribly alarming. Do you agree with that? Disagree with that?
Which part?
In terms of defensive linemen, specifically defensive ends, other than Dani, did you see anybody else that really was standing out outside of 33?
Not necessarily today. I mean, and there weren't many opportunities. They didn't have much time. They weren't throwing the football like crazy like that. I mean, it was, again, first game of a dominating fashion. No highlights from any individuals on that side of football. I mean, besides Zane and DDS on the outside, because that interception was very nice, very athletic for a defensive tackle to do that. Shout out to Zane on that one.
That's exactly who Zane is. There are not a lot of defensive tackles built like him. Nevada throwing the football 11 of 21 for 125 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, 52% completion percentage. Rushing the football 31 attempts, 2.5 yards per carry. So that was a rough day for the Nevada offense. Ultimately, wants to lean a little bit more on the passing game. Just couldn't really get anything started. You and I discussed it a lot during the offseason of Jim Knowles installing this defense, and historically in places like Ohio State, Oklahoma State, it taking multiple years for his scheme to really take hold. What did you feel about what the defense presented today? We kind of talked about how the offense felt, but what did you think the defense presented? What felt the same? What felt different from last year?
It felt sound. I mean, I guess you could say less aggressive, just like kind of blitzing from that standpoint, but it just felt sound. It felt like there were 12 players on the field and everybody was in the position that they need to be in. And I think that's a good feeling from a defensive perspective. It didn't seem like there were many holes anywhere. Seemed like people were playing with the right responsibilities and with speed. So when you have that in game one, I feel pretty good about it.
In the end, total statistics for this game, Penn State 438 total yards, held Nevada to 203 yards in totality. Penn State 5 penalties for 45 yards. That was kind of like right around the average that Penn State maintained last year. It was about 50 to 60 penalty yards per game. So that drives James Franklin crazy. And you and I saw him up until the final whistle coaching his ass off, obviously, getting into the refs about what he saw on the field, the play clock, those sorts of things. So continuing to get those guys in the games in situational football so they can learn something, continue to see the importance of that. Taking a look at a couple of other stats. Let me see. Adjusted rushing yards per sack, or after sack yardage, excuse me. Nevada had 93 total yards rushing, removing the sack yardage, that is. Penn State 137. In the red zone, Penn State was perfect of 7 of 7. I don't know much more you can ask of that. 3 turnovers created by Penn State. No turnovers by the Nittany Lions. 1 fumble for Penn State. Obviously, that wasn't lost to the Wolfpack. 3 sacks for Penn State, 1 for Nevada, and then 9 tackles for loss in total by Penn State. And this is coming off multiple previous seasons where Penn State continues to eclipse the TFL record that they set the year before. So we'll keep an eye on that. Special teams, Ryan Barker was exactly what you expected. You didn't see the punters really worked out all that much in this game. But for me, the kick return game, Justin, and we were kind of joking about King Mack, Khalil Dinkins, who was it? But you saw a lot of guys get involved, and every last one of them had success. What did you feel about that position?
I mean, special teams is a weapon, especially as a championship level team. You have to win on all 3 phases, and they definitely did that today. We talk about explosive plays, and on the return game, that's extremely valuable to the offense and the defense, for that matter. I mean, you could just you're turning natural possessions into big plays. So you definitely saw that from the returners. Like to continue to see that type of movement moving forward in the rest of the season. But it just shows that there's a lot of talent in different areas throughout this football team.
Yeah, there's a ton of talent, period. And again, while Ohio State was in a dogfight with Texas out in Columbus and won that game by a touchdown, you kind of see the balance of power in the top 5, the top 3 at least, and kind of what I was saying. If you are in a situation come early this week where Ohio State jumps you and goes to number 1, I encourage Penn State fans, don't freak out, don't lose sleep. Like, the number 3 team beat the number 1 team. You can understand that. Penn State took care of business against a lower Mountain West opponent. They did exactly what they had to do. So I expect Penn State to sit tight at number 2. And I do expect Ohio State to potentially jump Penn State. But as of right now, at the time I was recording this, the odds for who could win the national championship, it's Georgia and Ohio State tied at 1, and then 2, it's Penn State at plus 650, according to our friends at FanDuel. And then after that, it's plus 800 for Texas. So the odds for Arch Manning and company, a little bit of the shine is off Arch after that opening game. I feel like he can rebound, but this is about what Penn State put on tape. Again, this is a game, and the next 2 games against FIU and Villanova, Justin, you know this all too well. This is just take care of business, stay healthy, which is the number 1 objective. You pointed out, to my knowledge, pretty healthy game for Penn State. and Penn State looked like exactly what you thought they would look like in this game.
They did. And I mean, I think it's a great opening game to keep momentum moving forward for the first quarter of the season.
Yeah. Before we go, I think this is just me as a lifelong Penn State fan. Shout out to Bo Prabula. Congratulations to Bo Prabula. One, ultimately was named a captain for the Mizzou Tigers. Two, jumped in to the game they had to open the season, granted against Central Arkansas, threw a touchdown pass for 51 yards on his first pass attempt as a Mizzou Tiger. I think he was 23 of 28, nearly 400 yards of total offense, nearly four touchdowns total, passing and rushing. Like, I was just so happy, Justin, for Bo Prabula. I think there's an alternate universe where every Penn State fan would live to see the York, Pennsylvania kid starting for Penn State football. But, you know, we're fortunate we have Drew Allar, so like life is good in general. But I was personally just so happy to see that for Bo Prabula. So personally, it's the Bo show in Mizzou. Congratulations to Bo.
Absolutely.
Tell us how you guys are feeling about this opening victory for Penn State. The number 2 Nittany Lions take care of business against Nevada by a score of 46-11. Let us know how you guys are feeling. Hop in the comments section. What did you like? What did you not like? What are some things you'd like us to cover later on this week when we start to preview the game against FIU? Some other takeaways we can have from this game, but just the overall feeling is Penn State looked exactly like a lot of people expected them to look in this game. And Penn State is off to a really nice start here in the 2025 season with some enormous expectations, but just one step at a time, the 1-0 mentality, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you for joining us. He's Justin King. I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State, a Penn State football show presented by FanDuel.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by FanDuel.